Hello again, everybody. Sparkster1701 here, and we are now into our third week of Aviation Month. And this time, I thought I'd do something a little different. This time around, I'm going to bring you a Micromaster group. This is the Decepticon espionage team, the Airstrike Patrol. Now, the Airstrike Patrol was released in 1989 and would be available during the final year, 1990, and would be discontinued at the end with the end of the toy line. At least here in America. In Europe and Japan, the line would continue for another year. Alright, to introduce the group, we have Whisper, Stormcloud, Tailwind, and Nightflight. They each make up the Airstrike Patrol, and we're going to talk about each one of them individually. First up, we're going to talk about Whisper here. Let's bring him up a little closer to the camera so he can be seen. Whisper is described in the More Than Meets the Eye guidebooks as being the leader of the Airstrike Patrol, and apparently some of the comics also use that as well. He supposedly has all the know-how and skills that his compatriots lack, thus why he's team leader. But many of the others have their own opinions about him being somewhat ineffectual as a leader, thus why all of them are openly seeking to take his place. As a figure for a Micromaster, his articulation is somewhat limited, which is to be expected given their small size. His arms can move a total of 180 degrees, sort of. Looks like probably about 179. He can move his arms almost all the way straight up, and of course they can go fully straight down. He does have a joint at the hip, so he can be bent at the hip. Plus he does have a joint at the knee, but unfortunately his legs are fused together, so you end up with some awkward-looking poses with him. Whisper's own personal motto is undetected in flight, undefeated in fight. That makes him sound like he's some sort of sneaky, super tough guy, which will be somewhat explained after we transform him here. Bring him up close again so we can transform him. First thing you do is fold his arms down to the sides. Then next we're going to take the back portion of his feet and fold it out to become the cockpit. Then you fold up his hip backwards. At the same time bend the knees a bit till it gets flush, and then fold down his wings. And then that puts him in his airplane mode, which is supposedly the F-19 stealth fighter craft. Now, while this did not actually become an actual airplane for military use, it does look rather sweet, and he was technically the first stealth airplane featured in the Transformers toy line. One thing that you'll want to pay attention to for loose samples of Whisper is these two side fins on the front. They are very thin and they can snag and break easily, so I would not recommend you keep him in your pocket like you might have done as a child. Next up on the list, we're going to take a look at Stormcloud here. Now, Stormcloud is the electronic warfare specialist of the group, according to a lot of the guides, like the More Than Meets the Eye books, as well as the Transformers wiki. Stormcloud is also the Starscream wannabe of the group, who likes to be just like Starscream and boast proudly and in front of everybody that he will replace his leader. Unfortunately, it's also described that Stormcloud doesn't really have the brains or the know-how, or even any of the cunning or skills that Starscream had to be able to do it. So he just comes off as an idiot. As for his articulation, he's a little bit better than his boss in the fact that he can get his arm to go fully straight up, and also it can go all the way down. But that's about it for him. Otherwise, he's got the same articulation at the knee and at the hip. His own personal motto is, "The air is my playground." So that does make him seem kind of childish as such. You know, what kind of grown-up refers to an area as their playground? But whatever. To transform him, he's pretty simple. Just you fold down his arms. And it's pretty much the same as what it was with Whisper. Fold up the feet, bend him at the knee and hip, and bring down the wings. And then there you have it. This is his jet mode, which is a Dassault Rafale. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, folks. Which it's a French fighter craft. Again, the thing you'd have to watch out for are these side fins here. But I would probably also keep an eye on the wingtips as well. They look like these small ends here could probably also easily suffer from stress wear. Next up is Tailwind. Tailwind is described as the schemer of the group. And it's said that, according to the More Than Meets the Eye guides, that he is the second in command of the unit, mainly due to the fact that he possesses a little more intelligence and cunning than Stormcloud and Nightflight, but he tends to be the overpatient one, waiting for the right opportunity to spring and take over. And that's probably his biggest flaw. His personal motto is, "Revenge is sweet, victory is sweeter." So he does come off sounding like he's a bit of a vengeful character. Unfortunately for him, he suffers the most on the articulation, as his arms are fixed in this position. They cannot be moved, except to be brought inward for his transformation. But otherwise, he has the same knee and hip articulation, although his isn't really allowed to bend to go forward. It can only bend backwards, as seen for transforming him here, which we're going to do. We first fold his arms in to bring out his wings. Go around the back and fold down the front of his airplane. And we grab the hip, fold it upward, and bring his legs back down. And now he's in his airplane mode, which is obviously, although with this blue color, I would almost want to say that he's a Cobra Rattler, but in reality, he is an A-10 Thunderbolt, too, which also did inspire the Cobra Rattler of the G.I. Joe toys. Now, if only they'd put the engines down here, Hasbro could have gotten away with having it as an official Transformer G.I. Joe crossover toy. That would have made an interesting prospect, wouldn't it? Interestingly enough, as you may have already also figured, the A-10 mode that Tailwind here is also the same one that the Autobot Power Glide becomes. Lastly in the group, we have Nightflight. Nightflight here serves as the team's scavenger and spy. Although, according to many of the sources, he's been known more to wait around and snatch stuff that's been carelessly left out. So that kind of reduces a lot of his effectiveness as a spy. As for him on articulation, he's a little bit better with the arms, as, due to the way he's designed, he can reach a little further back behind him, both up and down, so he's got probably the best arm articulation. He does have a joint here at the hip that he doesn't get to use very often, and unfortunately the knee joint just allows more for his transformation than anything else. To transform him, you simply fold his arms down, try to keep them straight. Reach around back here, fold down the front of his aircraft. Fold up his legs, get them lined up, and then fold up his wings a little bit. And that puts him in his airplane mode. Now for Nightflight, he is made to resemble the Grumman F-14D Tomcat aircraft, most famously seen in the Tom Cruise movie Top Gun. Although Nightflight here, like Tom himself, is a little too short to be a believable F-14. Cruise is a little bit too short to have actually qualified as a Navy pilot, for those of you who didn't know that. It's also interesting, as like Tailwind beforehand, the F-14 was the inspiration for the G.I. Joe Sky Striker toy, so again, potential missed opportunity for Hasbro to cross-promote their toys at that time. About the biggest downside for Nightflight being an F-14 is that his wings are fixed in this position, so they don't get to swing out like they did on the actual airplane. These guys, like most of the other Micromaster patrols, had no loose parts available. However, this entire patrol did reappear the same year they were released as other toys. Whisper here would be recolored and sold as the Autobot Ground Shaker. Stormcloud here would be recolored and sold as Skyhopper. Tailwind would be recolored and sold as the Autobot Hothouse, and Nightflight would be recolored and sold as Airwave. This is the only group from the 1988 line, 88-89, the first year group, that would be entirely recolored and sold as other toys. The only other ones that came close to that was the Off-Road Patrol, where 2 of those guys would be recolored and sold in other toys. Now we're going to take a look at their Cardbacker, which I just recently got off of eBay. This one's in reasonable condition for about what you could expect. Over here it has the price tag where they were sold for $5. About the same price as a thing of Micro Machines, which was their main competition. The only downside to that is that usually a package of Micro Machines came with 5 vehicles, whereas we only got 4 Micro Transformers. However, since these guys transformed, I guess that was something of a little bit of a bonus. We at least got to transform them instead of just drive them around. On the back side here, we get a little bit of an explanation of the Micromasters, Whereas it claims they were commissioned by the Power Masters. These specially trained combat patrols use their miniature size to infiltrate enemy lines, blast into battle with Micromasters. The comics and such more have changed that explanation to claim that the Micromasters are more energy efficient Transformers, allowing them to run on considerably less energon, which more or less allows them to continue their war more efficiently. And up here, the rest of the top shows off not only the Airstrike Patrol themselves, but the other two Autobot patrols that were available at the same time. This was one of the first wave guys. And then down beneath it, you have each one's personal motto and instructions. That way you can see where I was getting their personal quotations from. And you can see they're very simple transformations. Then down here at the bottom, we have their tech specs. Still done in purple, showed they were Decepticons, and this picture here of each individual one is the same as how they appeared here on the front of the package, just laid out a little differently to fit in the space. It gives their name as the Airstrike Patrol, and their function is espionage. The group's motto is, "The more tightly you hold a secret, the more we like ripping it away." Spent years practicing in the mercury swamps of Cybertron. Perfected the fly, spy, and fry teamwork technique of stealing info and blasting their targets. Rank among the most capable and savviest of Decepticons. Constantly fight among themselves to take credit for the group's successes. Always blame each other for its failures. Their inability to get along is their greatest weakness. Now we'll lay the decoder here over the tech spec, and this one's laid out a little bit differently here, as intelligence and firepower and rank were taken out. No, not intelligence, but firepower and rank were definitely taken out of the group Micromasters to make room for a teamwork and cooperation stat. As you can see here, both their teamwork and cooperation is a dismal 2. Their strength is 4. Their endurance is 6. Their speed is 7. Their intelligence is 8. Their courage is 8. And their skill is 7. So that does back up the claims that they are some of the best at what they do. Now, what do I think of them? Well, personally, they were my first Decepticon Micromaster unit, so obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased towards them. I always found them to be an interesting little group. The odd combination of airplanes made them stand out to me, especially when you consider the fact that we have 2 attack aircraft, a bomber aircraft, and a stealth fighter. That made them rather unique in how they looked and definitely opened up a lot of possibilities for them. And as they are a top-notch espionage unit, that makes them almost necessary for the Decepticon army. Their constant ability to bicker with themselves and fight amongst themselves is no different from any other Decepticon group. However, at this stage in the Transformer lineup, it does come off as being somewhat stale, as it had been going on with many, if not all, the combiner units and within the Decepticon hierarchy itself. While not having them totally get along like they're the best of buddies, it still would have been nice to finally see that some of them could air their differences out a little bit better and function as a more cohesive unit on the battlefield. And thus, this concludes my review of the Decepticon G1 Espionage Airstrike Patrol. If you like it, thumbs up it here on YouTube. Please don't forget to subscribe and post a comment. Next week is the last week of Aviation Month, and we are going to do an Autobot flyer to close the month out, so look forward to it. This is Sparkster1701 saying catch y'all later.